The new upcoming tactical shooter Gray Zone Warfare just gave us some new intel about what kind of gameplay and features we can expect with the early access release, as well as the full version release down the road. They kind of snuck this under the radar by making a post to their Steam page, listing a bunch of new info. So in this video, we are going to dive into every bullet point that they mention. I'm super excited for this game, of course. I love the realistic style of gameplay, all in a jungle setting with extraction elements, missions, looting, and all that character progression stuff. Everything that I love seeing in a video game these days. If you're new to my channel, I do have a focus on extraction shooters where I make guides, story-driven content, and daily live streams all here on YouTube. So if you're into that, make sure to drop a sub for more content. Now let's dive right into the intel, starting with things that we can expect from the early access, and then we're going to dive into the expectations for the full release. So first up, 3 distinct PMC factions supporting up to 48 players in total, with a maximum of 16 players per faction. That leaves you 32 enemy players on the map that you have to compete against, which is a pretty small number considering the grand size of the map for Leang, which we'll talk about in a second. But I do find this part interesting. So Gray Zone Warfare is an open and persistent world, meaning that players load into the game and are out on that server for their adventure. But that also includes all the time spent talking with traders, selecting missions, and just connecting with other players in your base. So players are not back at the main menu selecting missions and then queuing up into the game, but rather they're selecting a server and then doing everything from within that server in the persistent world. So given the large scale of the map, coupled with the 16 player size factions, and taking into account that players won't all be out on the map at the same time like they would be in an instance style of game, I get the feeling that PvP will truly be a secondary thing. They talked about this, we talked about it in our previous Gray Zone Warfare video. This is a PvEVP game, not PvPvE. So the PvE is a very big aspect of this game and is of the utmost importance, as it seems. And this really does reinforce that as well. So next up, we have the expansive 42 square kilometers open world of Leang, and this is where all the action is happening. And we've kind of talked about this earlier. This is a huge map. A huge map. This is like 4 times bigger than your average Battle Royale Warzone map, for example. I mean, this is a very big map, and it's going to be really interesting to see how it's all filled up. What do we got going on in this map? We don't have a lot of details about what we can expect inside the map, but as I talked about in my previous video, we do know that there is some kind of event happening in the area of Leang, and the PMC groups are brought in to kind of investigate and figure out what's going on. So there's definitely going to be some intrigue here for sure. Exactly what it's all going to entail, I don't know, but definitely excited to dive in there and uncover all of the secrets of Leang and traverse that beautiful open jungle landscape. Next up, we've got the ruthless AI behavior with hundreds of enemies reacting to the player's moves throughout their actions and emotions. We kind of talked about this briefly with the previous interview that the creative director did back in December. He talked about how the AI was going to get more and more advanced with the full version, but in the early access version, it's going to be a little bit toned down, but there are going to be a lot of AI, somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,000 perhaps, and they're going to be everywhere, and they're going to be reacting to how you're playing. So if they sense that you're down a player, they're going to push. If they feel like they're getting their butts kicked, they might run away. So really interested to see how this all plays out, because this is a very core component to this game, as you can probably tell with, as we've talked about, PvE comes first. And PvE really means dealing with a lot of AI. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how difficult this actually is. Can this even be played solo? I mean, we know it can be played solo. They talked about it, but is it realistic? Is it impossible? How far can you get? You know, all these things will be answered once we get our hands on the game, but definitely interested to see how difficult the AI truly is in this game. So next up, we've got complex internal and terminal ballistics simulation for a realistic shooting experience. Comprehensive simulation for realistic firearm recoil based on real-world data. This is something that they've talked about for a while now, the emphasis on realism with their game, and obviously with the gunplay, the recoil, all of these things are extremely important to creating a realistic feel to your video game. And as you might expect, Gray Zone Warfare has spared no expense when it comes to realism regarding the shooting and recoil of the guns. And as I talked about previously in our last Gray Zone Warfare video, they talked about the body cavities, the way that a bullet will interact with a surface. And so this is kind of like a thing that's never really been done before, where the type of bullet and the surface that it's interacting with is creating a different type of cavity into that object. And it's something that's kind of like taking it to the next level as far as realistic gunplay goes in a tactical shooter. Which leads us to the innovative health system that intricately simulates even bodily cavities and damage effects. We know there's going to be a lot of different types of damage in this game, different types of heals, blood loss, organs going out, things of that nature. And so they're taking the health system in this game to the next level as well. This is basically a common theme with Gray Zone Warfare. They're taking the play on the tactical shooter and then taking those systems and elevating them to the next level. Next up, we've got a network of 6 unique vendors offering 150 quests in total. And this is right up my alley. I'm all about having missions and quests to kind of help guide players along a path, kind of a loose path. You can kind of deviate however you want, but the quests and the missions are there to kind of keep some semblance of a long-term goal going at all times. And I really like that. I really don't love the extraction games where it just ends up being all about PvP and nothing more. No one cares about anything other than PvP. They have nothing else to guide them other than to kill other players. While I absolutely value PvP in these games, you can't get that kind of intensity without it. But I do love having those missions, and 150 missions at the start of early access is a pretty big number. Very excited to dive into all the missions, see where it takes us, check out the lore of the game. And, you know, as far as the vendors go, it's going to be very similar to Escape from Tarkov. We're going to be using them to grab missions and buy supplies and things like that. But I'm really very, very excited about the quantity of quests that we have that's going to be available for us at early access with Gray Zone Warfare. All right, next up, we've got the weapons. So 8 highly customizable weapons with over 400 interchangeable parts. Obviously, that's a lot of parts. And also, that's a low number of weapons. You've got to assume that 8 is also including sniper rifles, pistols, SMGs maybe. So I'm not sure exactly what to expect from the weapons department. Maybe there's just a couple of each at start, but surely, as you would expect, they will be adding more weapons over time. But yeah, at the start, looks like we're getting 8 total weapons, but should be enough to let us dive in and have a lot of fun with the game, I would imagine. But it's not just limited to the guns. We also have 80 equipable gear items as well. And that's going to be like grenades and things like that. I think there's going to be plenty for us to dive into when it comes to having a lot of fun in Leang and trying to get through all of this content. Next up, we've got an engaging, interconnected player progression system. I love the player progression system concepts in these extraction style shooters. It keeps you coming back for more as you're continually kind of like have these RPG elements, experience, leveling up, doing the missions. Kind of really gives you a lot to kind of push forward to every single day that you're playing the game. What they mean by interconnected, I'm not entirely sure, but just the general idea of having player progression is huge. I love an overall leveling system when it comes to my character in these types of games. We've also got detailed character creation and extensive apparel customization options. Very similar to the Ragman inside of Escape from Tarkov, where you're getting all this character customization stuff. Very cool. I always like having a little bit extra stuff to work for. Another reason to like maybe get some currency or complete some missions to help you get some of these new apparel items to kind of show off how far along you are in the game. And I'm sure it'll all tie back to that extensive progression system that we talked about with the character progression earlier. So very excited to check that out. And we've got squad size, so confirmed, allowing up to 4 squad members for coordinated gameplay. You would expect nothing less from a tactical shooter to be able to have a squad with you. I wonder how that's going to all play out. I think with a AI-rich environment, it's going to be less likely that you're going to kill your own teammates as it is in Escape from Tarkov. You don't see a ton of people running huge squads in Escape from Tarkov, even though it is allowed. Because of the team damage and people accidentally killing each other in firefights. So given the PvE focused nature of Gray Zone Warfare, it is very possible that 4-man squads would be very, very plausible and easy to manage. But, you know, we'll have to see how it plays out. Once again, as I said before, very excited to try this game solo. I'm a big solo gamer in these types of games, so really wondering, is it even possible to complete some of this stuff solo? We'll find out, but we do have a squad size capped at 4. That kind of leads you nicely to the integrated social features, including friends, VoIP, and Messenger for enhanced player interaction. So this is really good to know because you can just queue up solo into one of the servers and then meet other players or you can have a friends list going. There's going to be opportunities for players that maybe don't have larger squad sizes that want to join bigger teams. They can using these social features. So really, really nice to know that the basics of communication amongst friends and other players of your faction is already implemented into the early access. And that is it for the early access bullet points that we have. And that's a lot of juicy intel. Some of it brand spanking new, some of the stuff we kind of knew a little bit about, but very, very excited to see kind of what they've given us here. And you know they're going to be continually kind of building on what they have so far. They have a final vision, I'm sure, and they've given us a hint of what some of that is going to look like with the full version bullet points. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at those. And they've also released this in this Steam page post. And we're going to start with a complete map featuring all locations and diverse biomes. So all locations sounds like they got a lot of extra points of interest that they want to add to the game that may not be available at early access. Diverse biomes is really interesting. It kind of represents like different kind of feels, not just all jungle all the time. So very, very curious to see what the full map is going to include. We know, as we spoke earlier, that there's probably going to be some unknown areas that maybe we don't have access to in the early access that kind of have that large lore potential for the final version. And right on cue, they talk about the Hazardous Ground Zero area with endgame enemies and new storylines. So they've already got this thing fully mapped out in their heads exactly how they want it to all play out. The Ground Zero area, Hazardous, kind of implicates that there'll be some kind of poisonous gas. Maybe we have to be using gas masks. You can actually see a gas mask slot in one of the inventory screens if you've been paying attention to the video in the back. When you go to that inventory, you can see in the bottom left that there is a gas hazardous symbol there. So there is going to be that element of radiation probably. But very, very cool to see that there's going to be an quote-unquote endgame style of things to be looking forward to with Gray Zone Warfare. And as I did mention earlier and in my previous video, the different types of AI behaviors based on the enemy type, situation, time, or weather condition, they're really trying to enhance the AI and how it interacts with the combat and what's happening around them. If all their teammates die, they're probably going to be interested in fleeing, right? When's the last time you saw an AI have a teammate die next to him and then flee away, right? Normally they just continually bum rush you until they're all dead. So a little bit more dynamic AI is planned for the future. And I think honestly, that next step of AI evolution in the games is huge. It's going to make a big difference in the gaming experience. Another interesting one is the immersive environmental storytelling featuring mature and engaging plots. It sounds very strange, but it almost sounds like a step in the supernatural, like the SCP style of storytelling. I don't really know a lot about what that all means exactly, but it sounds like they have, from a plot perspective, a lot more underneath that we don't know about. So really, really, and I've mentioned it before, I'm really interested in kind of uncovering the lore of this game and pushing through all that storyline and seeing what the end has in store for us. So next up, we've got Advanced Quest System encompassing both main and side storylines. So we know we're getting 150 missions right out of the gate. But what else do they have? Are there going to be a lot more storylines? Where is it all going to end up? How many missions are we going to have? I'm really, really excited to kind of dive in. Once again, love having the mission system and the quest system to help drive our motivations every single time we go into Leang. It's just great to have that kind of dirt road to follow along. And if things change or the squad gets into a firefight and your priorities change, that's cool. That's one of the most exciting things about these types of shooters, the unknown of what's going to happen when you go out into the world. You may go out to do one thing and then your priorities change dramatically at some point in time. But I do love having those storylines to kind of continue to drive us in a direction to a finale. And next we've got game-changing, captivating seasonal events. I love seasonal content, especially when they say game-changing like this. It's definitely insinuating that the world will be changing from what you're used to seeing in a previous season. So they're willing to go in and make some large-scale changes in order to encapsulate a new seasonal event. And I think this is very, very cool. I love seasonal events. It keeps things interesting, especially for players that play a lot, which of course we do. So very, very cool aspect of the game to make sure that they're capitalizing on that seasonal type of content. Next up, we've got resource intensive and survival focused crafting. So I'm all about crafting. I love the idea that you're incentivized to go out and find resources in the world and bring them back to your base. It creates that element of intensity when you are holding onto items that you know that you need for crafting or for survival items or whatever, and you want to make sure that you get back to your home base with those items. This is one of the most compelling things about extraction shooters in general, is that loot-based element. I need this loot, I gotta get back home with it. If I die, I'm set back severely. So love the idea of having that crafting built in to the gameplay as well. Next up, we've got dynamic weather changing and gameplay experience and an accelerated day and night cycle. This is very similar to Escape from Tarkov. I think this is fabulous. The day-night cycles and the weather changing just create so many more dynamic opportunities to kind of give you a different look at a map that you've played a million times. I can't stress how important the day and night cycle and the weather changing thing is. I'm very, very excited that this is something on the radar for the long-term vision of this game because it makes such a difference from an immersion perspective. And this game is all about immersion. You can tell that not just from the realism of the gameplay, but also the visuals and everything else about it. Next up, we've got a unique skill system based on the player's achievements, not grind. I love that they emphasize not grind here. The creative director back in December on an article with Game Rant talked about this to some degree, and it's being emphasized again here about the not grinding. The idea was that if you have completed an achievement or a task, something that says, hey, I'm an incredible sniper from X number of meters, then I get this achievement, and then I gain a skill that is pertained to me unlocking that achievement. So I had this incredible sniper, I have a consistent record of sniping from a long range, and maybe I get a skill that is added to my character for long range sniping. And it's kind of suggested to be in that manner. Do we know exactly what we're talking about here? No, this is kind of a long-term concept idea. But I love that it's not based on the grind. If you look at Escape from Tarkov and you're trying to level up perception or something to get perception level 50, which has huge value in the game, but it takes so long to get there that players that are casual players are never going to be able to reach that point, and they're never going to be able to reap the benefits of that. So I do love the idea of these skills being tied to achievements and not grinding. Next up, we've got the customizable player quarters. We've got enhanced weapon customizations, fully customizable gear. We kind of got a taste of it in the early access is what they're saying. We're going to be able to get some unique kind of look to our character. But it sounds like it's going to be taken to the next level and expanded upon dramatically, including a player operating base that you can customize as well, kind of like your own little home. And I'm assuming this is all strictly from a cosmetics perspective, but again, we'll have to wait and see what the vision ultimately entails. But I love having extra customizations. I'm all for it. And last but not least, we have the complex trading system for players. Probably going to be similar to the auction house for Escape from Tarkov, or the flea market, sorry, haha. And it's a great place for players to trade stuff between themselves. And this is also kind of insinuating that the loot table and the amount of stuff in this game that is going to be available for players to loot and take home with them is going to be a lot. And that's a good thing. I like having complex loot tables. I think it makes things very, very interesting. I see a lot of different items and I kind of know what I need, and I get excited more so about some things than others. And when it comes to looting, it's kind of like that experience of scratching off a lottery ticket. You're opening up a box and you don't know what's going to be inside it, and all of a sudden, boom, you hit something that's of extremely high value and you get really, really excited. And then all of a sudden that intensity and heart rate starts to elevate because you know that you really want to extract this item. It may be worth a lot, you maybe need it for your own base, whatever the case may be, but it really is insinuating a really robust loot table, and that is one of the things that makes extraction shooters so exciting. Wow, so that was a lot of detail, a lot of new stuff. We dove into a lot of it. I know I may be getting a little bit overexcited about this game, but it really does look to have everything that a fan of tactical shooters and extraction shooters is looking for right now in a game, and there's really not a lot out there in the genre for us, so very, very excited. And as far as the release date goes for Gray Zone Warfare, we still don't have any details, but the last communication is that they are shooting for an early access at the end of Q1 in 2024, which is right around the corner. That early access is going to be on Steam. It is going to be PC only at the start. So barring any deviation from that, we may be exploring Leang a lot sooner than we realize. And as with all of this stuff, always remember that the game is going to be in early access. So features and content are going to be added slowly over time, and ultimately, likely a few years down the road, there's going to be a full 1.0 final release of this game. And once again, I'm planning on doing full coverage of this game right here on YouTube, so make sure to drop a sub for more Gray Zone Warfare content, and I'll catch you in the next one.